not expecting a massive crowd coming in or anything, so. Good, fire it up. We got a light and everything. We're good to go. Appreciate that. Well, welcome everyone to the Municipal Planning Commission meeting for Wednesday, July the 5th. It is nearly 5 p.m. So I will call the meeting to order. A relatively light evening, I think. Has everybody had an opportunity to review the agenda? You have, you'd use a motion. Unless there's something somebody wants to add or ask about. Member Gullickson?
Thank you, Chair Creasy. I'll move the agenda as presented.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? Very good, thank you. And then we've got minutes there as well from our previous meeting from April 19th. I believe there was a couple of members missing, so if someone that was here can make a motion, that would be great. And certainly, as always, if there's any omissions or inconsistencies there, bring them forward. Member Ross, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson Creasy. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Thank you. Everybody's all good with them? All those in favor then? Thank you. So we do have one permit application before us. I think that I expect everyone in this room knows the proponent, Mr. Peter DeWitt. Welcome. And this is for a commercial addition with some variances at 4718 49A Avenue. And if I could have Senior Development Officer McLaughlin take us through this item, please.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So as mentioned, this is a development permit application for a commercial addition, which includes variances to the bylaw. So the property is located in the C1 Downtown Commercial District, and it is also part of the Downtown Area Redevelopment Plan. So the DARP is what I'll call it for the remainder of the meeting. And the DARP is really the piece that we're talking about this evening in regards to the application. And so this is the Old Town Main Street District mixed use area. And this area facilitates the rehabilitation of existing buildings and the development of major additions and new infill development in a manner that preserves, enhances, and celebrates the unique historic character of the area. So I think we're all very familiar with preserving the downtown historic area. And administration is in support of this application. And so we're asking two things of the commission today for your decision. So section 14.4.13D1 talks about building setbacks in the DARP specifically. And it talks about buildings being set back 0 meters and that the development officer may approve a setback of up to 3 meters to accommodate street-related activities. And so we've kind of said the bylaw regulation is between 0 and 3, but really it's 0. And the proposed setback is 8.7. So we're asking for 100% variance on that. And then the second item is in regards to the architectural design of the building. So the same section about the DARP talks about the building being designed so that brick, stucco, or painted wood is the predominant building facade. And that red brick represents more than 50% of the exterior. And so kind of what we're focusing on a little bit is about the 50% red brick. And that the proposed finishing is stone and brick columns with neutral colors and blue accents. So there is no red brick proposed. We did do consultation. We sent this out to 21 property owners and received 1 response. They simply checked the in support box and provided no additional comments past that. So the applicant, this is the existing site. So what they are proposing is to construct a 1,200 square foot addition onto the existing building for the purpose of office space. So the photo on the right is how the site exists today. So you can see the industrial type structure located far back on the property. And on the left hand is the satellite image. The orange represents the footprint of the building addition that's proposed. When we look at the site plan, the proposal also includes providing several enhancements to the site. So that includes changing the access location to be in the middle of the property to 2 parking stalls, one being a barrier-free stall, as well as some new landscaping in the front, which the site currently does not have. It's just all gravel up to the sidewalk. And then a sidewalk around the building, and then hard surface parking stalls at the rear of the property. And then the bottom image is what the front of the facade is proposed to look like. So with these variances, you do have the authority to approve them, provided they would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with the affect the use, enjoyment, or value of the neighboring parcels of land, and that it conforms to the land use bylaw in regards to use, which it does as office space. And so we are of the opinion as administration that the variances that are being asked today would not interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood, and that this is a unique parcel of land because of the lot's location and the pre-existing streetscape that it's on. So when we look at the DARP, the circled little red property is where this is located. So you can see the majority of downtown is red, and then we have this one little jut out onto this property and the property next door, which is a developed parking lot. And so we think it's likely that the lot was included in this overlay district because of the commercial zoning. The brown that you see adjacent to it is a residential DARP zoning. So there's 2 zonings on the same street when it comes to the DARP overlay. And so with the Old Town Main Street district, mixed use district, as it has a number of architectural guidelines for development, many of which this proposal does comply with, including compliant height. It has pedestrian level windows, decorative details, and facade articulation, shown on the previous slide in the facade information. However, due to the lot's location on a residential street, there are those 2 deviations that are being asked of you today. So when we talk about the setback and the 0 to 3 meters, the 3 meters is really to allow for pedestrian amenities like a street front cafe. So that's why the development officer is allowed to approve up to 3 meters. However, in the case of this application, we do feel that the setbacks are mainly intended for buildings that are constructed along Main Street or directly in the downtown to provide that positive interaction between businesses and pedestrians. And so this building is set back 8.7 meters and that is to accommodate some parking and then that landscaping as well. So again, this is the site plan, and we can see that proposal for the front of the property. When we look at the street itself, the setback averages from 6 meters to 10 meters on these residential properties, and our proposed subject site is highlighted there in blue. And so if we were to average all of these setbacks, it comes to 7.9 meters. So that's the average on the street. And so we do feel that 8.7 is more compatible than requiring a 0 meter setback. So if you can imagine looking at the street and now you have a building right along that front property line, from a compatibility perspective, it is better for it to be set back in this case. It's also appropriate because, as you can see in the satellite, there are a number of other front parking areas such as driveways, and the adjacent parking lot to the southeast there also has its access in the middle of the property off of 49A Avenue. And so the second variance is in regards to the exterior finishes. So as I mentioned, it requires that the front of the facade be designed predominantly with brick, stucco, or painted wood, with red brick representing more than 50% of the exterior cladding. So as you can see, what's proposed there, it is those neutral colors with the blue accents, and that's to be compatible with the existing structure that's on site, that's in that blue color there. And so when we looked at the street itself that this site is located on, there are no other buildings that have predominantly red brick because it is a residential street, except for this one property and the parking lot next door. Then we do feel that the requirement for the red brick is intended to complement the historic downtown. along Main Street. And so there is some history to those red brick buildings in regards to some early year fires that occurred in the downtown. And then the town passing a bylaw stating that any future buildings in the core of Lacombe be made of brick and any standing wooden buildings be faced with brick. And so we all know that the current downtown does have that. However, we feel bringing it onto this street might seem a little bit out of place based on the context of the streetscape. So this is the elevations, which are also included in your package for what all the sides would look like. And then these are some photos from the street. So you can see there are small little columns on the residential garage facades of red brick, but predominantly they look like residential dwellings and don't have that feature. And then just the streetscape, which kind of gives you the setbacks and shows you how far the houses are set back and in regards to how this building would potentially look if it were pulled forward to the front of the site. And so we are recommending approval on the application as we do feel the development will complement the existing streetscape. We do feel it's likely that the site was only included in the DARP overlay because of its commercial zoning, even though the street is predominantly residential. And it will also be a positive revitalization of the site as the present development was constructed under a previous land use bylaw and is quite old. So we do recommend MPC approve the applications, and there's several conditions listed in your agenda package for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Do you have any questions to open with? Member Ross, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Creasy. I see none, so I'll just be glad to make the recommendation as resolved that Municipal Planning Commission approve the development permit for commercial addition offices with variances to the LUB on the land zone C1 downtown commercial district located at 4718 49A Avenue, legally described as Lot 27, Block 7, Plan RN1, with the following conditions 1 to 9.
Thank you very much. So with respect to the package, one thing that threw me was on page under setbacks, the diagram that was used there. We don't really have this type of a situation at all on this property, do we? Where there's a recessed part of the building. It's just merely an extension of the existing building. Is that okay? I think I better appreciate what you were intending for that. It just kind of threw me because I was looking through it. I went through it 10 times. I'm thinking this doesn't apply here, but okay. And the other one was there is no elevation. For this part, I just found it odd that there wasn't a north elevation. Was that purposely or no?
The elevations are just so how it transitions from the to the.
Thank you. And being we have the proponent here, I will ask, is there any intent to do any sort of enhancements to the north elevation at all, or will it be staying as its current state?
Yeah, like right now, it's planned that it will remain the same.
Okay, thank you. There was, I believe, 9. Is there any more on the next page? Yes, there is 9 and some notes outlining the conditions with respect to this application. Have you been through each and every one of those?
Yeah.
And are there any that you are not familiar with, or you?
I have reviewed the packets and I don't think there's anything in there that's unreasonable or
Okay.
or not doable. So yeah, I'm okay with that.
Very good, thank you. Anyone else? Member Gullickson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Creasy. I just wanted to say I think this will be a great addition to that street and an improvement to that corner. So I'm certainly all in favor of this. I think as far as the building goes, it looks from the drawings, looks very attractive. And I think it'll be something that's welcomed by all the citizens along there.
Go ahead.
I'd like to echo Councillor Gullickson on that one. I'm really looking forward to the increased property value visually of that property. I do have two main concerns that I wanted to discuss, though, both parking lot construction and the color of the existing building. That building, although the blues definitely go hand in hand, is very inconsistent and faded. And I feel that while we're looking at this proposal for adding a building, adding this light blue tone to it, it being a very good opportunity to bring the property together as a whole. So food for thought, discussion related to the parking lot. I'm curious about the additional landscaping and if that has affected the design of the parking lot by planning.
So we only had made one comment on an original proposal of the parking lot where they had another parking stall, which wasn't necessarily practical. So we actually asked them to remove a parking stall because of that, just from a maneuverability. And it did actually give a little bit more area for landscaping in removing that parking stall. In regards to the site, they do have to provide landscaping in the front to enhance that. So that is part of the requirement under the bylaw.
So on that note, my curiosity here is the usage of the space seems rather wasted, in my opinion, just with needing to pull around a corner and then 2/3 of the parking lot being completely vacant to accommodate that turning. Is there any particular reason the lots weren't designed 90 degrees so that the front of the vehicle pointed at the building so it could accommodate maybe 4 vehicles and remove the landscaping, move hedges, so that you can still meet the landscaping?
So we do have the architect with us on Teams, so he might be able to answer that. Part of it is you're not supposed to be able to back out onto the street, right? So you have to have that maneuverability. We don't want, even though people back out of their driveways, when it comes to commercial properties, we don't want them backing out of their parking stall onto the street. So they have to have that room. And I don't think there would be enough room for that to occur and have an access. But Brendan Bozma might also be able to speak to that if he's able to.
Mr. Bozma, can you hear us? That makes that easy.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. There was just
Okay.
some questions. I don't know if you heard us,
Yeah,
the
I heard.
comments towards the parking.
Yeah, I mean, it was commented on already that we can't back and we shouldn't be backing onto the street from a parking stall. And so that's the main reason why we did it the way we did. And yes, it does require more parking or more asphalt area. But we don't have any choice if we don't want to back onto the street. That's more or less the reason it's done the way it is. And it's based on the numbers in the land use bylaw. And for practicality, maneuverability to back out and be able to go straight into the street rather than backing out onto the street itself, which is more dangerous.
Thank you. Peter, you had some additional comments as well?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Like, of course, we would like to see more parking because parking is at a premium downtown. So we try different configurations, and I think also the handicap stall takes more space than a regular stall, and we have to have that. So, of course, if there would be an allowance or a different way of doing it, we would definitely appreciate that. But this is about kind of the solution that we came up with.
Member Nowichin?
So for the sake of conversation, would you be open to, if a motion was made, to adjust or accept that allowance onto the road? Because in my opinion, this isn't a whole lot different than angled stalls down a street. Would you be open to the opportunity to put more stalls in, turning cars 90 degrees?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Is it within our purview to approve this?
That's a bit of an unusual situation. I think maybe we'll defer to our senior planning officer to speak to that.
So if that's something that MPC wanted, then I would recommend that we table the application for a plan to be drawn up and to be reviewed by our traffic engineer to make sure that that's something, because they're going to look at the road, they're going to want to know how much traffic goes down that road. And so they're going to have to do that analysis to determine whether having additional vehicles backing out onto the street are appropriate. So that would be my recommendation if you wanted to go down that, is that you table it for further information until potentially the next MPC meeting would have to be the tabling motion. My assumption is that she will likely say the same thing that myself and the architect said about backing onto the street. We would want to limit that as much as we possibly can. Even though it's already happening, it still has to be reviewed from that traffic perspective.
Thank you for that. I guess the one troublesome item in addition to that is to accommodate more spaces. That would mean having a wider entry onto the street and thereby eliminating the area for the landscaping as well, which I don't think is in our best interest either. Of course, more parking would be good, but in this particular case, I just don't, having done a lot of these items myself, I just don't think there's an awful lot of opportunity here to increase the number of stalls and also keep the safety in mind at the same time. So certainly well within your right to propose an item and make a motion if you'd like for it to be discussed. That's definitely not a problem.
Mayor Kersey, I can add a little bit of additional information in regards to the parking. And so it was something that myself and Jennifer Kirk reviewed in regards to the parking and how many on-street parking stalls there are. And there's actually quite a few within walking distance. So because this is so close to the end of the road, the service road is within us, it's within 60 meters, I think. So there is a lot of on-street parking in the area, although people do like to park where they're going in front of where they're going. That was a consideration in regards to when we asked him to remove one parking stall that from a functionality perspective just didn't work. We did it in regards to that and say, okay, well, if we're asking for a parking stall to be removed, is there other options? And there is lots of options for on-street parking in the area as well.
Member Kents?
I just want to comment on the existing building. I think it needs an upgrade also. Being downtown, it's in a fairly nice area. The building right behind it to the north has been upgraded on all four sides. Looks beautiful. And this building definitely can use it.
Just I want to get
Go
back
ahead, Peter.
to Tyler's question about the color of the building. That's a good question. It's definitely something we would consider. Like instead of the blue, go with a different color. So paint the metal that's on there right now. Brent and I have talked about that. So if that's a concern or a desire, then we can definitely talk about that. We would be open to discussing that.
So is that something that you would like to formulate into condition of acceptance, or how do we want to go include that?
I would ask if you were going to add it as a condition, that you add it as a new condition. So you would word it and be specific on what you want to see from the applicant. So you wouldn't just say that they need to enhance it. You would need to specify what you want them to enhance about it. So you would say paint it a neutral color. Maybe they could add a band of color around it to break up the facade. Do you want more windows? Do you want more stone? You would need to actually articulate what you would want to see so that when they submit that revision, we're able to say, yes, this meets the intent of what MPC was asking for.
Member Kents?
Doesn't DARP already do that?
Uh, Certainly in general terms, but not specifically for each site. It does not. No. Anything additional to add to that question?
So DARP talks a lot about front facades, not side facades. There's not a regulation that says that you can't have a building wall that's however long this one is without articulation. That specific regulation isn't in there. So that would be something that MPC is going to have to add as a condition if you want to see that on those side and north elevations.
So I'm sorry, I didn't see your light on. Go ahead, Member Nowichin.
On the upgrade to the existing building, it's of my opinion that the building should probably not have been included in DARP to begin with. It is the one random property that is not joined to the purpose of DARP at all, in my opinion. And I was on the committee when DARP was created. So I don't personally think that it needs the upgrades to meet the brick standards, the stucco standards and such. I would just really like to see that building be consistent. Our downtown is beautiful. It's close enough to our downtown. I think it should be consistent. So what I'd like to see is that that building have maybe a color match done to the new proposed color. And I'd be happy to make a motion to that regard. In addition to that, back to the parking stalls briefly. You had said that we're going to have to table this for now to revisit the parking stall concern. Correct?
Yes.
Peter, would you consider tabling this for a later meeting? Is that of value to you?
It would depend how long when the next meeting is and how long it like we're in the prime building season now. We're already getting pretty late, so I would like to see a decision sooner rather than later.
So I guess I just want some clear direction from MPC as to our expectations of this. For myself, I have no problem with the colors and whatnot here. I do have a bit of an issue with the transition between the new and the old, because quite frankly, it looks like an addition, which is never the goal of a well-done addition. And I'm just wondering if the masonry treatment perhaps could be added on that transition area, something to help blend the two. And I think that would be sufficient. Naturally, it'd be nice to just to redo the whole thing and have it all the same, but I don't know that that's something that I'm prepared to enforce at this time. But there's a concern that this is viewable from a variety of different angles here, and I think there would be some value in a little more attention to that transition area, if not the entire west elevation, and perhaps some minor upgrades to the north. From speaking with you, it seems like as a proponent and the owner that you naturally would like a aesthetically pleasing final product. Is that something that you would entertain, or?
I would have to talk to Brent. Maybe Brent, you can speak to this as well. I would have to look into what that exactly means in additional costs. I think the way Brent designed it, we took that in consideration as far as making it, not just a lean-to or an addition.
Sure.
Definitely, I feel once the building is finished, it will look as one unit. Brent, do you want to say anything about that?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So really what it came down to is a cost. To refinish the outside of the entire existing building is going to be quite expensive. And so we thought, well, let's keep it, pretty basic and really enhance the front using the more expensive finishes. I mean, one way to make it kind of all match is to paint the existing that neutral color, as someone had mentioned in the meeting already. So keep the metal as it is and then paint it. The other option is to remove the metal and put a new finish on there, but again, it's a cost savings measure in order to make the property more profitable. I mean, the more money you put into it, the the less money you're out in or have in the end. So I mean, if we can come up with a cost-effective balance between the two, then I think we could entertain that idea.
Fair enough. Thank you for that. I mean, certainly, yeah, fair comments. And I'm going to admit one thing here. When I'm looking at this, I was holding this drawing up and I'm looking at the transition, and I was looking at the west elevation, which quite frankly is not going to be seen very much. So I appreciate the fact that the masonry connection for the transition area in the east elevation has in fact been done. And I think that that will go an awful long way in helping that as well. So,
I mean, Peter and I had already discussed, repainting the existing building, just, without removing the finish, but just repainting it a similar color or the same color, just so that it all kind of matched. Even though it's a different finish, I think it would help to bring the two sections of the building together.
great. Thank you for that. Member Ross?
Thank you, Chair Creasy. I think in the discussions we're looking, I think all have been compromising consistency. So I think a repainting would be significantly less than practically resurfacing the whole building. It would be a more of a blending compromise, and you can also kind of look at colors of the surrounding buildings to keep, as we emphasize, our downtown is very unique and beautiful. So would it be, I guess, process to add another amendment to paint the current building to have consistency? What would be, amicable with the presenter and planning and development and what we've been discussing, so our applicant can move forward?
Thank you. Member Gullickson?
Thank you, Chair Creasy. What is the color of the new building on the east side? Is it blue or is it cream?
Brent, that's a question for you.
So I don't recall exactly what it was, but the highlights were blue, and we went with more of a neutral beige color for the rest of it, I believe. Or, I mean, I don't recall exactly what the colors were, but it'd make more sense to use not the blue for the existing building, just make it the other main color that's on there.
Yeah, it just looked to me like maybe the blue is going to be at the top and then cream at the bottom.
Yeah.
I'm not, if that blue matches fairly close to the existing, I don't know if we're gaining a lot anyway. I don't know if it does.
Yeah, the blue that's on the existing is quite a vibrant blue, I believe. But it is also, I mean, the building is old enough, it has faded a little bit. So, and I think in order to not bring too much emphasis to the side of the building, I would do it. I don't think I would leave the building blue and then match the blue to the building. If anything, I would do it the other way around, even matching highlighted blue on the front, do that color instead on the side rather than a vibrant blue. I don't think it looks not as attractive on the front with such a vibrant blue.
I think one thing that we should consider, there's been some talk of enforcing that the building be painted. I realize that coatings and whatnot are better than they have been in the past. However, on a metal clad building, I am certainly not a fan of most paint jobs because they seem to be fairly short-lived and they end up looking far worse in a relatively short time period than what they do if you just left them alone and put up with the faded color. I think we can all expect that there's going to be a color difference, even if the same siding that was used there was used. The color will be different. It's been a lot of years. There's a lot of sun fade. However, the vertical and horizontal changes and the color highlights are done along with the masonry. I'm satisfied that it's going to look presentable. Is it going to look like an addition? Absolutely it is, but that's what it is. So I just want us to consider that when we are thinking about enforcing painting on metal cladding. We've had some talk on two different items here. One with respect to parking and one with respect to finish changes, we call it, or finish upgrades. I'm not sure what the word was used along the east side. I think we need an indication of these two items separately so we can better move forward on these items.
I just wanted to let MPC know and the applicant know that the next MPC meeting is August 2nd. So if you were to table the application, it would not come back until August the 2nd. We've missed the window for the next meeting in July. We could potentially rush it if it was just going to be this one application. And we could address both the facade and have conversations with the applicant and the parking at the same time. But I don't know that we would have the traffic engineer review it in that time. I believe she's on vacation. So I think best case scenario for tabling would be coming back on August the 2nd.
Do you have any reasonable expectation that a different parking configuration is going to be brought forward that will still address the needs of this space?
I think Brent has probably gone through as many parking configurations as he possibly can to get the correct amount of parking on the property. What would end up happening is if you had the vehicles nose into the building, A, you'd be backing out on the street, and B, that whole entire area would have to be asphalt in order for them to do that, or else they're backing out, trying to back out through a small access point and then back out onto the street. So I do think there would be some challenges in trying to reconfigure the parking a little bit differently, but maybe Brent has more to say on that as well.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I think that the owner would dearly love to have more parking in there because the cost is going to be the same for what's hard surfaced here. And if there was a way to have had more parking stalls than what is presented here, I can pretty much guarantee that's what would have been brought forward. Is that a safe comment, Mr. DeWitt?
Yes, that is correct. Yeah.
And
Well,
we
once
did,
again, there's no harm in asking. We'd all love to see more parking. I think it's not reasonable to expect that we're going to come up with any miracles that's going to allow for more here, unless we are prepared to let people back onto the street. And I think that in a commercial area, that would be a mistake. But that's something for every member to decide. I'm sorry, Mr. Bosman, you had something to add?
yeah, I was just going to say, we did go through a number of different configurations, and you know, we had one where there's 3 on the front, but the one was a bit awkward to get into. And we're only allowed a certain width of access to the road as it is. So I think we would have to get a variance to allow a wider access. We'd more or less have to have a curb cut along the entire front of the property in order to make that work. We would also be eliminating at least one on-street parking stall right in front by doing it that way. So we're adding maybe 1 or 2 to the parking lot itself, but eliminating an on-street parking space. So, I mean, are we really gaining much by doing that? I mean, we're actually losing landscaping space in order to do that. And yes, I mean, we would gain more parking, which would be more beneficial to the owner, but I think we would also lose out on those other items.
Thank you. So is the parking something that we wish to hold this vote up on or pursue, or what's the wishes of the commission? Member Nowichin?
In regards to losing the stall in the street, that is something that I hadn't considered. So there is very minimal gain. It would be at one stall at most here with that change, and that mixed with the loss of landscaping, maybe that's not the best solution. So although I appreciate the discussion around it, because parking is definitely a thorn in my world, I always like to take the opportunity to increase parking downtown. I would like to, let's get this settled, and I would like to make a motion that the building, the existing building be painted in the neutral color to match the new building. Okay. Reword this.
Okay,
I
we actually have a motion on the floor.
Oh.
So we would handle that with an amending motion first. We would handle, and so with respect to that amending motion, is there any additional comments?
So I'd like to make a motion to add a 10th condition. The applicant shall enhance the existing building facade with the paint to match the proposed elevation colors.
And if you want it to be cream specifically, then we can add that in there. Or if you were okay with blue, if you want to be that specific, or if you want to let the applicant work out kind of the color that's going to come around the side of the buildings, and just understand that he's heard the conversation tonight and that you would be satisfied with that. So that's up to you to add whether we want to add a specific color.
I am happy with your choice, one or the other.
Very good. Anyone else on the amending motion? Or, yeah, I'm still on this amending motion. So with respect to the motion just made then, all those in favor? And those opposed? That is passed 3-2. Thank you. And with respect to the overall motion of the application, I believe it was Member Ross that put it on the floor earlier. And before I go there, the parking item we've dealt with, correct? Very good. Was there something that you wanted to add, Member Nowichin? No? Very good. All right. One last opportunity. Any additional input or information that you had as a proponent, Mr. DeWitt?
No.
Okay. With respect to the permit application 61 -250.99, all those in favor? See none opposed. That is passed as amended. Thank you. Next up, we've got a summary of the permits issued by the development officer since our last meeting. Would you care to go through those and highlight any of the important items for each of them, please?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So we haven't met since April, so there were a few applications that we did approve in-house per se. So we approved a Class 3 sponsorship sign. So most of these applications that got approved were discretionary uses, and provided we receive no opposition on them, the development officer is allowed to approve the application, and then they're still subject to the 21-day appeal period. So in that regard, we approved a Class 3 sponsorship sign just next door here at the sports field. The discretionary use of automotive sales and service on Wolf Creek Drive. a couple of home occupation twos. And so those are home occupations where clients or customers come to and from the home. So there was a hair salon and a aesthetics business, two aesthetics businesses. And then we approved some canopy signs in a residential area on an apartment building. And for the same reason, they're just discretionary. And no opposition was received on any of these applications. So we just approved them ourselves and advertised them.
Thank you very much. Anyone have any questions or concerns with any of those? Very good. So last meeting, we did embark on a MPC refresher session. I understand we're going to continue on that same vein.
Yes,
And who's going to be handling that?
I am.
Very good.
We will actually we were thinking we would adjourn MPC for the public portion as it is more of a training session and not necessarily something. I don't think that has to be recorded if that works for you, Mayor Creasy.
It certainly does for me. I don't think that it necessarily has to form a part of the MPC meeting. That's good. So it is 5:43. Does anybody have a motion for adjournment then? Member Gullickson,
Thank you, Chair Creasy. I'll move for adjournment.
thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. We are adjourned.